Seeing that we have a quorum, I'm going to call to order the October 10th meeting of the Concord Transportation Advisory Committee at 9:33 a.m. First item on the agenda. Yes, sorry, getting ahead of myself. Okay, so roll call. Mariana?
Here.
Okay. Nick?
Here.
Ellen?
Here.
Dan?
Here.
Phil?
Here.
Myself.
Yes, we're running
Okay.
late.
Okay, great. And Laura sent me a message that she couldn't make it, unfortunately. Okay, so first item is to approve minutes, and there was a draft of minutes that Ellen prepared for September 12th meeting, and I think there was one I saw Nick ask for in addition. So are there any further edits? Okay, take a motion.
I move that the minutes amended, be,
I'll second.
thank you.
Okay, Nick,
Aye.
Ellen.
Aye.
And
Yep.
Aye.
Mariana?
Hi.
Myself, aye. Okay, and so with regard to minutes, while we're on minutes, I was gonna say, we're missing some minutes. Two of them are absolutely my responsibility. I'm working on those. There might be, I was going back and there might be one set of minutes that was approved, but didn't get to be posted. And I will try to follow up on that. Looking back over, the later meetings where that was brought up, et cetera, et cetera. One other thing I wanted to mention was, shall we decide that, whoever prepares draft minutes should send them to staff to distribute to everybody, and that people should hold comments on them till the meeting where we review them, rather than risk. I mean, I know they're just minutes, but just for kind of a clean standard procedure, what?
Yeah, so generally what we do is, because there's other committees that rotate who's taking minutes.
Mhm.
They finish those minutes, send them to staff.
Mhm.
We send them out to the committee.
Mhm.
We blind CC the committee.
Mhm.
Any comments?
Come
Send it back
staff.
to us. We put them into a final set that goes out to the committee
Okay.
before your meeting,
Mhm.
maybe only the day before,
Okay,
so that you don't have to go through lots of edits during the meeting.
okay, all right, so that facilitates, but yeah, I just want there to be a correct standard.
It seemed like this practice of Ellen sending them out and asking for comments first,
But that's a violation of open
Yeah,
meeting law.
I think that's
Yeah,
what
so
Mark
this
was
is-
saying.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
getting,
yeah, yeah.
there's a potential depending how.
Yeah.
you
So it's the
interpret.
same process, but it's being done through staff and we
Yeah.
do it through a
Okay.
blind CC process.
I think we don't want to take your time up, but if you're volunteering.
No, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, one other thing, Ellen had suggested to me that maybe we might, to regular who takes minutes, we might, do a rotation based on alphabetical order of last name or something like that. And again, since they're taken from, we can take it from recording, there's no reason I can't, go back and take my part too. So, does that sound like a reasonable idea? And, who's gonna do it today?
I'll do it today.
You'll do that?
Oh,
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Mariana, did you say something?
Oh, I was just volunteering, but happy to. I haven't done it in a while. It feels
Yeah.
like maybe the chair should be exempt from doing minutes.
I don't know. Yeah, there are other things I'm trying to do, so,
I would exempt you.
okay,
If I
thank
can-
you, thank you.
Just that.
I'll just catch up with the two that I already am working on and, try to look for missing ones. Okay, so that's enough on minutes. For chairs reports, couple of things. One thing, on Sunday morning, I went to the initial gathering spot of the Mothers Out Front, ride, to Bedford, from Concord Center to, Bedford, Depot, et cetera. And, I know that Phil and Laura went along. Linda Neeman was kind of, describing to people the maps with certain crossing dangers and things like that. And I also happened to be at a Public Works Commission meeting last night where Linda mentioned this also about the dangerous crossings at various places and asked if they could, Mothers Up Front could come present some what they observed to Public Works at some time. There'll be more about the Public Works meeting later under another item. I think that's mainly it. I did go to present the vision of transportation and public transportation to the Economic Vitality Committee, and we have an item talking about those types of outreach and collaboration. I'll talk about it then. And I think that's, unless I remember something else, that's enough for the chair's report. Okay, as far as Stantec goes, the next item, I talked to town engineer Steve Ducron. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back to Chair's report. There's one more thing I forgot. There's a message sent around from the town manager that there's going to be now an effort to hire a director of planning and land management. That there's not, as I understand it, the rec for a specific transportation focused planner is put on hold or not, no longer active. This capacity, I think on an interim basis or someplace I saw permanent, but permanent, interim, permanent, whatever. Megan Zamuda was doing that, but she's got a lot of other things to work on, and I'm sure that Elizabeth was stepping in on a lot of things. So this should be progress. I'm not sure specifically what it means for staff support of this committee, but maybe Elizabeth can clarify what the immediate plan is.
I don't think there's been a final decision made by the town manager on the roles or projects that the director will take over.
Okay,
But, you know, as far as I know, you're stuck with me for a while.
okay, that's good.
That's a good thing.
Repeat the name of that role, the title of that role, director.
Go ahead, Marianne, sorry.
Repeat the title of that role.
So this is Marcia's position. This is the Director of Planning and Land Management. This is a senior management team level position, similar to Public Works Director, CMLP Director. This person will manage the 4 divisions in this building, planning, natural resources, health, and building. So I'm not sure that titles, they may change, you know, the title. But that will be the role.
Okay, and that person reports to the town manager. It's that, as far as you know. That's
Yes,
that level,
okay.
just like Public Works or.
just like Alan Cathcart
Right,
or, yes.
okay. Excellent, okay, so now on to the Stantec. So I talked to Steve Ducran, and one of the exciting things is that there is work going to finalize a separate contract focused on engineering implementation of asset management plan and how to kind of integrate this into safety improvements at crossings and whatever. So this, I think, my understanding is that, because of concerns about what could be done with the existing Stantec contract in terms of bringing it closer to what I think TAC is looking for in terms of implementation and support of actual infrastructure, maintenance improvements, et cetera. I think this is good news. As far as what the remaining contract condition is, I'm not quite sure what the status is on that, but I think this is a major advance because it'll very specifically support requests for money to bring up condition of roads and sidewalks and crossings and whatever. I'll also mention that, and maybe I'll wait till the next
So
section and item to talk a little bit about some of what I learned at the Public Works.
is that just
Meeting,
the
yes.
sidewalks and crossings with lines and signs and things? Would that include, lights?
Well, I think that well, this particular contract, I think the idea is that, my understanding is, that what it's mainly focused on is working from the standpoint of, we have a lot of, roads that have been neglected. We want to bring them up to a certain standard where they can be maintained more cost effectively and serve the public better. In terms of doing any kind of road reconstruction, rebuilding, et cetera, all those things about lights and markings and
Oh,
bump outs and all these things might as well be integrated with a engineering plan, because it's one thing to say we'd like these things. It's another thing to say we want to fund something that's important. It's another thing, which I think is really important here, is to integrate those things together so that the planning is comprehensive and most efficient, et cetera. So I have kind of high hopes there. And I think that given the fact that Stantec has both planning teams and engineering teams, they're a good partner to help integrate this. And I think it's actually an opportunity for them. So I hope that contract gets finalized and we can kind of move forward. Any other questions about that from TAC members? Okay, and I'll go to the next one about communications and collaboration. So I know that Alan went to the Climate Action Committee.
yeah, Nick gave me a lot of good background that I should think about and talk to them about. It was a really great meeting and really was focused on people reviewed the, our vision, and not specifically the mass transit, but the request to the committee was first to look at it. We really had a fairly brief discussion. I was talking about a trip I had down to Plymouth with Janet Miller, in which we took a look at a electric ride circuit app that Plymouth uses and Boston uses. It's really oriented toward tourism. So it's got not a wide route, but it's a fixed route that goes around and it's hop on, hop off, paid for by advertising for business. In other words, there's a really successful application. It's not necessarily the mass transit we might need in total in town, but it's something that tourism might want to look at. It's all electric. It's got a lot of nice features. And I haven't looked into the dollars around it, but I was gonna look at Lexington about enacting on their overall bus system, but also talk to Boston and Plymouth in more details about the dollars and cents. So what the request was to the climate action was, okay, we can do the economic and fiscal sustainability, but can you help us measure carbon footprint? So really can not only say that this, whatever we propose as mass transit is fiscally sustainable, but it helps us achieve our Envision 2030 goals.
Okay, well, that's great, because that certainly fits with the
Yeah.
charge of that committee and.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's about, it's a wonderful collaboration because, and this could include, by the way, I mean, my thinking is include MCI Concord as well. There's a lot of opportunities to plan and then measure dollars and climate impact.
I went to to present to the Economic Vitality Committee and I put together a PowerPoint to sort of help me go through it, which I think Elizabeth has a copy. Maybe you can send that out to people. Or the Economic Vitality one, I can send it again to you.
This is the one you just sent me this morning?
No,
No.
this is back, when,
Would have been the end of last month,
yeah,
the 25th.
25th. Anyway, we can communicate.
No, I can, give me a second.
Okay, all right, doesn't have to happen right now. Anyway, so I had 10 minutes to
Oh, this
present.
is the one you sent on Wednesday? No, that's Junction Park.
No, this was, anyway,
Park.
but the way, there's a few things there I pointed out to them, trying to figure out exactly how to engage best with this particular committee. So it was a first step. I think Nick had talked, did you talk to Mike Lawson?
No, I just exchanged mails
Just about setting some, so I think this should be a continued thing. But to make a long story short, I pointed out how, you know, in the long range plan document, you search for the word transportation, comes up 274 times in a 274 page document. And even neglecting the number of times it's just in titles repeated over and over again, it's over 200 times. And in the economic vitality section, it's very clearly stated about, you know, how it helps, how it's important for businesses and particularly getting employees to work and in terms of coordinating things with developments to have transportation available. I also talked to them about the public, you know, I talked to them about the, you know, road infrastructure, et cetera. They kind of listened to that. And then I talked about public transit. And that is when things started to pick up a little bit because there did seem to be, and I got some feedback that there are concerns about businesses that want to hire people that don't have transportation.
Yeah.
If somebody lives in Lowell and wants to come work in Concord, you know, they don't have a car, how do they get here? One woman said that mentioned the specific case of an employee they really wanted to hire, but they couldn't figure out the transportation thing. And it turns out that the Economic Vitality Committee is in the process of sending out a survey to business owners.
Oh.
And the suggestion was arrived at there that something about transportation for employees would be helpful to put on that. So they're drafting that. If, I don't know if Nick, if you have any.
I'm
to
gonna
follow.
contact, I meant to do that through Mike.
Yeah, if you could,
Versus
if you
doing
could
it.
do that, I think that'd be great.
Mhm.
I specifically said questions like, when do your employees start in the morning and when do they leave at night and things would be helpful because I showed some quick examples of services in Acton, Bedford, Lexington, and like in Acton, they have service that's part of a regional organization called Crosstown Connect or
Yeah.
something like that. And but their services like you know, run 8 to 5 or something and or 9 to 5, things like that, that doesn't really serve people who need to get in to set up a business or working in the evening, et cetera. So you know, I suggested generally maybe Nick can follow up questions like, you know, what are the hours that you need to cover and maybe what distances or what other communities you think people, you know, you'd like to draw people from.
Mark?
So I thought that was a good first step.
One, I mean, when you talk economic vitality, I know Emerson Hospital has a bus from, I think it's Framingham, to bring folks to work there.
Okay.
So that there's a, I think it might, you know, maybe that specifically, because I'm sure, you know, they run 24 hours.
Okay, and that's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that
Okay.
Emerson Hospital, because number one, when I looked at this Acton website and the things run by some of their service by Crosstown Connect, it seems like it's a regional organization. And it lists a number of towns, some of them founders, some of them later on, and it lists Concord, but I'm not sure if Concord does anything. So that's kind of a
Oh.
question mark about why it's there. But maybe it's a tenuous thing from, they have some service that brings people to Emerson and, you know,
Yeah.
something like that. But I also mentioned at the end of the economic vitality meeting as a, you know, public comment too, that, you know, Emerson Hospital is probably the biggest or one of the biggest employers in the town.
Yeah.
And economic vitality might want to see if there's synergies with things that Emerson needs. So Michael Lawson said that he would try to reach out to them, but that's something that,
As a business.
well, I'm just saying that whoever directs that must know about how, you know, employees them not being able to draw employees from where they want and patients, transportation.
That's what I was thinking, that the
yeah.
patients to Baker Ave, to the various, because it's employees, but it's also seniors getting, I know Council on Aging has a van, but
Right.
I think it's always sort of the users of the service and then most importantly, employees.
So you said something about shuttle. Do they have, does anything run from like the West Concord MBTA depot to Emerson? Because that
I
would be
can
an
find out,
obvious,
I don't,
obvious type of
Yeah.
benefit.
I don't-
There are vehicles that have Emerson Hospital on them that are.
well, maybe that's the question to ask Emerson, what is their transportation
Right.
plan for their clientele?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
And
how do they recruit employees and how do, what are the transportation options they offer them?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's always good for people to have a backup plan. Your car's in the shop or you
Yeah.
don't have a car or whatever.
Because the patients might be 9 to 5, but the nursing staff and every other staff, it's 24 hours.
Yeah. So there, could be some synergy and.
they're clearly defined shifts as well.
Yeah, I just think it would be a really wonderful, I mean, there's probably a lot of information and that they figured this one out.
Yeah.
Because they have the staff.
And eventually with the MCI thing, there's so much going on, but there are various different possibilities for the development there. Mixed use or it could include medical offices, it could include this, so there's a lot of
Yeah.
things to kind of start getting a lot of people aware of the need to talk, about options and
I mean, I'd be happy to talk to Emerson if it's helpful.
why don't,
Or
Nick's gonna talk
Okay.
to Mike. And if I mentioned at the beginning, I said, if you learn anything about transportation, please let me know. But, I think we should not have this drop off the table, but it's not, it's not
So-
a regression. Hey, David.
Quick question, and this is really a question for Elizabeth. Do you know anything about what the discussion was? Several years ago with Crosstown Connect? I know that there was some funding issues, but do you know what the ideas were that were being discussed at the time? There was an interest in more collaboration with that.
So it started off, the communities in Concord was one of the initial communities trying to get that program off the ground. Most transportation management associations start with private businesses. So this was kind of the first time communities got together to do something. And then for Concord, yes, it became a funding issue. We weren't able to get some of the larger employers, on board, and then there's an intermunicipal agreement that there was a period of time where again, there's been a lot of shift between, town managers over a short period of time, and they couldn't get the intermunicipal agreement going, and then it was COVID, and then it just, Concord hasn't pursued getting back in that game.
Yeah. Thank you, that's helpful. I think there may be an element of not reinventing wheels on the Crosstown Connect, that maybe we can just go back and figure out what was done in the past and figure out, just as Elizabeth said, there was staff turnover, there was a pandemic, all that stuff, but maybe, now that the dust has settled with regard to staff and no more pandemic, we could take another look at it without trying to, completely redo
And I think part of the
what was
problem
done
is
before.
that it hasn't settled for staff here, because we don't have a
Yeah.
transportation plan. Unless you're gonna take it on as a.
And from what I understand, they will not be hiring one.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but, that type of project.
It's a big project
It,
to
It
collect
is.
all the data from the towns and then,
But I imagine some stuff has been done, right?
oh, I'm sure Crosstown Connect and Transaction Associates is the one that manages the
buses.
actual program.
Mhm, mhm.
They can pull information, and I think it is, a great idea if, this committee, along with the Economic Vitality Committee,
Mhm.
can invite Transaction Associates to come in,
Mhm.
talk about where the program is today, what they're doing,
Mhm.
how they see Concord's being involved. What does that look like on the ground? What does that look like financially, as far as financial obligations? I'm pretty sure they'd be very willing to do that.
That's seems to make
Okay.
sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen their vans in town, so I know that they're physically here. I don't know, whether they're just passing through or dropping people off or really anything at all about it, but that sounds like a good way of.
It'd be wonderful to know like the routes and the usage and if they have any idea of whether it's for residents or employees.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I
that's.
think one of the, finding out what the status is now would be helpful.
Sure.
You get that easily, but in as much as the last time was, the business community wasn't interested in funding it at all. I think I'll have a discussion with Mike when I talk to Mike about, whether that's something that might change in the future. And obviously the town doesn't have any money to put on the table for it either, so I think we've got to get issues resolved about whether or not there's sort of at least an emotional commitment before the funding commitment from the various parties in town. I mean, collect the data. I'm not saying don't do that, but I think we're sort of, there's a major implementation issue in terms
Did
of.
you know why the businesses were not willing to support? For any,
Money.
it just, they didn't return?
I found that the merchants in Concord are much less visionary than in some other communities.
Okay.
My own
Right.
personal experience, having been a merchant in Harvard Square as well as Waltham.
Oh,
Okay. In Harvard Square, as an example, they seem to understand that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Mhm.
And that, everyone benefits if there's more economic activity. Here, there's much more of an emphasis, I don't want to spend any money on anything outside of my store, so I think that's.
So it may be, you take this, this first step, get that information, have the conversation with the Economic Vitality Committee. And, Transaction has been doing this for a while, so I'm sure they have, off the top of their head, can come up with a game plan of, what would be the next step as far as, going to different employers and having conversations with them and
How do we get the information from them and the other towns so that we might have something we can discuss with Mike and the economic.
yeah, no, so I'll send their director an email and ask
Okay,
her, let her
great.
know, this was discussed and, can she send some data, would she be willing to come and
Yeah.
talk to this committee and the Economic Vitality Committee and,
Right,
um,
okay, and
That's what-
I'll feel things out with Mike on the economic vitality committee.
Okay, that sounds good, and, so I mean, it occurs to me too that, it's a bit of a chicken and egg about, are you in favor of this, are you willing to provide money, but how much money and what do you get for the money, oh, that doesn't directly serve me, but I do think that the pandemic, post-pandemic, it's even harder to find employees who, some of whom have now found a way to work from home or change their life, priorities or whatever. There's also a large constituency in the town, I believe, who don't have transportation for a lot of purposes. Certainly, if they don't have it for medical and shopping to the extent they would like, they certainly don't have it to, come to public meetings or other events, et cetera, that they might like to. So I think as far as community interest, even besides businesses, there are some far-sighted individuals with financial means who might be willing to kick in. Look what happened with the Concord Bridge. So I think we need to know what numbers are for, the beginning and some of the kind of basic backbone connections between train stations, Emerson Hospital, just a few places. You can say 9 Acre Corner, and whatever, seems to me to be something that has very, very broad benefits, very broad usage pattern, and we can find some way to fund something. Any more comments from TAC members?
Another
Mary Ann?
point Yeah, another point on that, that has come up, that came up a lot in the study, or that we've discussed previously as well, is providing complimentary, train service between the two village centers. And I think that would, of course, have to be, a town collaboration with the MBTA. But that's something that's already there, if we want to include that in our thoughts.
You mean the service is already there, it just,
Yeah, the train's
formal-
already running.
Yeah, I've heard different opinions from different people about, you're within a zone. You shouldn't have to pay, or you don't have to pay, or whatever, but maybe we should kind of.
Well, I just
clarify that.
question whether we already have hourly service during the day, during the slack time of day, so when people mention expanded service or something, of just, how often do you want it?
No, but I think what Mariana was saying was, if it's known specifically that it's free to hop on the train to just go one stop within
Oh.
Concord, that is using an existing
Okay, resource.
resource.
Is
Yeah.
that the point? Marianne?
Right, yes, I don't think that, it doesn't solve the comprehensive equation, but that's just one piece of it that, if it is already free, could be publicized more, and if it's not, maybe that's something we can talk to.
Is it free?
I don't think,
I
I
don't-
don't think
I
it
don't
is.
think
I
it
think in
is,
I
but
think
they-
in practice it is, that if you hop on, they're not.
Yeah, if you hop
You're not
on,
going to
The
hop on.
conductor's not looking for anyone when they hop on in Concord, if they're
That's
going
true.
west or
Okay.
east from
Yeah,
West.
it's complicated, without an automated fare system and everything, it's complicated to administer anything, but that seems like a
I
pretty,
do not think it's free.
yeah, I don't think it's officially free.
De facto.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to the next item, which is continued discussion of signage and safety at Junction Park in West Concord. I have three more short PowerPoints that if Elizabeth can pull them up, and she'll be smoother at it than I am since she does a lot of presentations.
Which
Um,
one do you want?
Okay, there's one,
Number one, number two, or what you sent this morning?
the first one I sent yesterday. I think
Number one.
it doesn't really matter too much, but, so I went yesterday and took a few more pictures and walked, and the main thing I wanna convey is what I see is, there are a lot of signs. And signs, to me, have purposes of directing people and purposes of warning of hazards or encouraging safe behavior. And there are so many signs that the request that we had that had sort of come to TAC, first to the Lewis Ribbon Rail Trail Advisory Committee, and then since that's been disbanded, to TAC about modifying some signs that say walk your bike. Those are only a few of the signs that are really out there. So anyway, let's just walk through the park. So starting at the west end where before crossing the railroad tracks, there's bench and a post for the trail. Can you blow that up again? Some of that,
Oh,
can you do? What is it? Slideshow? That's good.
that's it.
That's great. Okay. So, and then, to the left is heading towards, West Concord Center. So go to the next one. And at that intersection, before you cross, there's a painted walk your wheels pedestrian zone. Which it's not clear to me whether pedestrian zone means there are pedestrians around, which as Barbara Pike has pointed out, the whole trail is supposed to be pedestrian friendly too. Supposed to be mixed use. So it's not, I think that's a little bit confusing to people. And then there's a crossing and there's that sign that says bicyclists dismount, dismount bike, walk on path. Which is a little confusing. Go to the next slide. The next slide shows that there's also a stop sign there, which I'm not 100% sure if that's for the trail, for the automobiles, it's not like right.
It's a small one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, I encourage people to, just go there and walk through and think about it. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. I still want to go through the pictures, but, because I think there's some specific things I noted. But, Elizabeth pointed out to me just before the meeting that, you were saying that why don't you repeat what you said to me about other committees?
The West Concord Advisory Committee met, I think it was last week. But they had also had a brief discussion about just signage in general in West Concord, and there's no cohesive signage, there's no coordination of signage, there's not even a coordinated blue P for parking and, or interpretive signage and I know the West Concord Junction Cultural District, quite a few years ago, at least 3, if not 4 years, had a grant, had Mark Favorman come in, try to develop a consistent signage program. It did not, there was no consensus formed on that, and it never advanced. So I think there is a synergy starting with a number of committees to think about signage for the whole village, and so not just this. So
It's a complicated one.
Yeah, And-
it
Just because there's so many, there are a lot of them that are sort of governed by regulations, federal and state.
there are, but
Yeah.
so
I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it's
Right.
complicated. You've
Right.
got to take into
Well,
account what can be moved and what can be changed and what can't be changed.
but I think just like, we're trying to set down transportation vision and goals, trying to look, since there are so many interacting parts and then these regulations, there are some regulations might say you have to have a sign, other regulations say, if you have a sign, it has to be like this. And that's very different. And if we don't have a vision of what we're trying to accomplish, for instance, guiding certain people in a safer path, or letting people know how things, what to be aware of in a
Well,
particular.
Yeah, I
place.
guess my question, I guess I have a question for it, which is, it's like a lot of things in the transportation and mobility area. It's complicated because it gets into lots of domains,
Mhm.
including regulatory issues and, economic issues. And is it obvious who's going to work on this or who might work on this? Because it's a lot of work.
Well, I don't think to me, I think we're at the discovery phase where there can be amateur discovery by us and professional discovery by some people and free discovery and paid discovery. And then a vision, and then you try to implement things that change it. I guess where I'm coming from is, I think I'm not at all sure that changing one type of sign that we could quickly recommend select board changing is gonna make things better. It might make things worse, and we're missing, I mean, if we or the select board or somebody decides that's the best thing to do, that's fine with me. But I feel like, the facts on the ground are pretty complicated and,
I mean, the
confusing.
first step should be an inventory of what's there.
Yeah, and that can be accomplished some different ways. So let's continue with the picture. Oh,
Elizabeth,
go ahead.
is there a sign standard in Concord Center?
no.
So there's not, nowhere, okay,
Nowhere.
it's let
No.
it be, except for business signs. which
Other
they do.
towns have gone, like Waltham did a thing, they paid, I think it was Sasaki Associates to do, a consistent, way, I forget.
Wayfinding.
Wayfinding,
Yes,
yeah.
that's what they,
So that they have a
Right, Mark
common look and
Favorman.
feel, and when you see a particular color and shape of sign, you know it's gonna
Communicate something.
help you get to some historic site or something,
yes.
Okay.
right?
Right.
So
So
that's,
in terms of regulatory regulations on signage, is there really that much control over bicycle path signage? I mean, it would be more
yes,
automotive
no,
based.
even things like those sharrows painted on the road, the arrows.
But
for
that's on a
bicycles.
road.
But that's on a road. So,
Right, but
so on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, I don't think there's not that level of standard for, because, I'm pretty, so the painted sign on the ground. You know, that's not a standard,
Right.
you know, because obviously, you know, people are pointing out, it's like, well, it's a pedestrian zone, get off your bike. It's like, well, no, it's a shared use path, you know, it's not a pedestrian zone. People can still ride their bike, but, you know, realize that there's other people using this, so, no, I don't think so.
So that's another part of the challenge here, you know, there's no
Yeah.
standard.
Well,
People know not to ride on sidewalks generally, but that's just ingrained, it's not a signage thing.
yeah, it's a sort of default thing, but maybe, sorry.
No, so this is, you know, where I do think it's complicated. Just because there's different, you would be talking about, you know, TAC, West Concord Advisory Committee, West
Mhm.
Concord Junction Cultural District,
Public Works.
Public Works, and, you know, the select board, because they have control over signage.
MBTA.
No, we wouldn't go there.
No.
Never.
They do have some control over it.
Well,
No, theirs is pretty rigid required by
yeah,
law.
there's,
It's
yeah,
not like optional.
so,
But that's a good point. One thing, I mean, one thing could be done is to scope it and say, exclusive of the MBTA regulated zone, here's what we might be
Right.
able to do to make things better. Or something.
well, and also Economic Vitality Committee, because they can pull in, you know, private businesses and you don't, you know, you don't start townwide, you know, you start with, the village, you know, West Concord, the village and the bit, you know, the business district and it may be that, you know, the four committees, you know, the recommendation may be that to the select board, you know, these four committees would like to collaborate on advancing, you know, a coordinated wayfinding signage, pulling in the different, you know, town, you know, departments and divisions.
And I mean, TAC has not been specifically charged with this, but so we may not be the lead organization or whatever, but given the fact that, to my mind, given the fact that there's four or more modes of transportation and more of usage in this area, and we can't just ignore it. Let's march through the pictures because I have three more things to say. So this picture here is when you cross that street from the west part of the trail. You see the same green stamp on the ground, you see railroad crossing on the left, you see a sign says bike riding cross tracks not allowed, but there's no indication that the specific indication, unambiguous, that the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail goes to the left or the right. So the implication is it goes to the left. So go to the next slide, if you would. Okay, and there,
How does it Bruce Freeman Rail Trail?
there's a railroad crossing sign on this path. And while I was there, at least one cyclist went straight ahead down the road to the left of the platform, which is what you would kind of intuitively think is the way to go. But off to the right, you can see a break in the fence past the railroad crossing sign, and go to the next slide, I think. Maybe a little mixed up. There you see. So you can see a lighted official railroad crossing there, but there's no wayfaring saying Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is one way or the other. You can see a cyclist passing straight down, which is, you know, seems to be the intuitive thing to do. Next one. Okay, so at that crossing, when you turn there, it's a controlled crossing, to some extent.
On one
So
side.
there's a gate on one side. I'm not sure what, I didn't, you know, I did this kind of quickly before heading to work, to my paid job. And,
No,
it needs,
there's a gate on both sides.
it needs, yeah, it needs more investigation,
Oh, I see.
documentation, you know,
Yes.
fact finding facts on the
Yeah.
grounds. Yeah, so this is like a really official thing that you would expect, for safety for a broadly used path, right? I mean, this seems to have a standard in the MBTA, obviously implemented this and intended this to solve some kind of safety problems. So go across. Okay, and then it curves and there's a long straight section, but it's very clearly indicated, I think, by the yellow stripe that there's a kind of a two-way path, so the yellow stripe there is a kind of a wayfinding element that's pretty clear. There's another one of those green stamps and a sign in the upper left there that says walk your bike again. But that's a pretty long straight section, and I can imagine it's very burdensome for cyclists to walk that long way when it's pretty clear and empty. And, you know, there's other questions about where pedestrians go. So next slide. And you can see that it curves around to the right and then bends to the left again. And there's another sign, walk your bike. And again, there's a cafe open, head knocking post
No, that should,
sticking out.
that should be gone. That should be gone.
now?
This was
Yeah.
yesterday morning,
Yeah.
yesterday
Oh,
morning. Yesterday morning, I
Oh.
took that photograph.
Oh.
This is, okay, I swear on the Bible, I took that photograph yesterday. morning.
What's there?
So I don't, to me, anyway, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut about why I think that's happening, but go ahead.
Oh, I know why it's
I don't
happening.
really, I don't really know. Certainly, I'll put this on the record. It does not encourage cyclists to use that half of the path. Right? Okay, and then this is also an issue, I think. This clearly marked path dumps out into Junction Park. No indication, go left, go right, whatever. I know, you know, there's the pavers there and the park pre-existing and all that, but nonetheless, just from a usage and wayfinding path, you know, people who know the area familiar, that's one group. People who've never been there before and coming in from Acton, what are they supposed to think, right? And adding loads more signs may not be the best solution, but whatever. So that's the end of one PowerPoint. Go to the next one that's shorter.
So I'm gonna have to leave in 10 minutes. So
So
I don't know.
we'll cover it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's just blast through it. Just again, trying to put facts on the table.
It's a few steps.
It is, isn't it?
Okay, so going the other way over that same section of trail.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful picture, you know, beautiful.
Oh, it doesn't.
Anyway, with it, we're not gonna go there. That's not.
No,
Okay,
no, I'm gonna
so-
go out there with a cordless drill and
No, it's pretty weird. One thing I want to, I forget exactly where this is, but another ambiguity is, after you go past the old station there, headed west on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, there's another crossing, and the crossing is, you know, probably put in by the MBTA as a general purpose, you know, pedestrian, whatever crossing, and, has the MBTA signs there, West Concord sign, but it's, there, even though the trail is marked, this is another potential crossing from one side or the other for cyclists, and it's very different than the other crossing,
Yeah.
which is controlled with you know, so
Mhm.
that's, anyway, just wanted to note that, so keep going. So then we get into this long curved section that kind of goes down and alerts people that there's a railroad, which is good, you know, again, go back to the previous slide.
What is the sign says, look before crossing, what does the black and yellow one say?
It says walk bicycles across, do not ride over crossing.
Wow, so
Okay,
intention.
so, you know, it doesn't show the pavement on this side, but you can see on the other side, there's no railroad crossing sign, so it's kind of interesting that the idea of a railroad crossing of being a motor vehicle crossing of a railroad is used at the other end. So keep going, let's zip through it, so I don't lose Elizabeth's help. Bike riding across tracks not allowed. Okay, go to the next one. And then there's that controlled crossing, and yeah, there are gates on both sides, you can see. And on the other side, when you get on the other side, if you look back to the right, this slide was there, you saw it before. Or I'm sorry, as you come across the railroad tracks, through the controlled crossing, there isn't an indication, I didn't get a picture of it, but I don't think there's an indication that the trail goes to the left.
Right.
So this is looking back, and there's another one of those green stamps, then go to the next slide. Now I'm getting confused. Okay, so if you jog to the left correctly, then you come to this. Again, this is also backward looking, but this is where you are gonna cross a road or access to parking lots. Next one. Is that it?
That's it.
Good, okay, good. Then the last slide deck is very short. But you can see that there are
Challenges.
yeah, I would think one of the consensus items is nobody says this is perfect. This is the best we can do. I don't think this is the best we can do.
So,
The issue.
while Elizabeth is looking, do we have any information about how many people have been coming through the park on bikes over the last couple of summers? That might be useful to know. I mean, I just, you
Well,
know,
we
since
need-
I live in that
I
neighborhood.
don't know how you would track that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I did actually with
Yeah.
Dory Kehoe and Cassette. We could do, I mean, I'd be very happy to
Yeah.
do a survey that does just that, pedestrians, wheels. You know, take maybe just one way to make get crazy and then ask where do they go, where do they come from?
Yeah.
Just because I think that the traffic is hard, and I think also part of that is people who no longer use it. Like, I think it'd be good to go talk to Concord Park, Concord Children's Center, the Carter Center.
Mhm.
And ask just those people, what, you know,
Okay.
are you people
Can-
using
can
or
we
not?
Come back to this in a second. I just want to zip through this while Elizabeth is helping, because that makes it easier
Oh,
for me.
that's just,
So, yeah, Elizabeth just forwarded to me this new historic features map, which is pretty cool.
This is the story, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail story map.
Is this the thing that got sent out yesterday?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so Jill Moonheron, one of our GIS analysts, updated the path through the park.
Yeah.
To make it more, to make it accurate.
Mhm.
And
Okay,
this is on the town website.
This is on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail website, but there's a link.
okay. So, on this slide, the first thing to note just is, it's not intuitively obvious to somebody at the north or the south, how they're gonna get between those two places. So we have this complicated transition. Then go to the next slide.
The red line is struck.
I'm not sure I got the locations right, so that, forgive me, but, the yellow line is a place where people coming from the west. I'm not sure, anyway, some locations are jogged a little, even the red line is not exactly lined up with the photos. It's very hard to, you need to be a military aero mapping expert with artificial intelligence to really match up everything. But anyway, the main point here is the yellow, the three green lines and the blue are kind of ambiguous paths or paths of choice for people using the trail, right? And if it's a mixed use path, it's kind of hard to screen cyclists into one path and pedestrians into another and wheelchairs into another, et cetera. So I'm far from suggesting any solution, but I'm just saying that, and I may not even, I'm sure I don't even understand the complexity of it, not using it all the time. But I think we need to get the complexity out on the table so that if we get to the point where people are suggesting changes, that we can be sure we're looking at all the impacts, right? Good or bad.
I mean, I think during the survey that does, maybe it's just current state usage paths,
I
trying to
agree.
figure this
Hold
one
on a
out.
second. We'll just finish the
Okay.
next, I think it's one or two more slides, not sure. Anyway, so just to kind of confirm that on this, what is it called? Open Streets map on the
Yeah.
town GIS, which again, I don't think the town creates, somebody creates this or it's hodgepodge, who knows? Hopefully, we're not subject to foreign disinformation campaigns, but
So Open Streets is not a town.
no, it's not.
Yeah,
It's
affiliate,
not.
so-
It's like Google Maps, but somebody else, yeah. So anyway, but it shows some color coded blue and red dots. And again, it's sort of it doesn't show that ambiguous crossing off to the left. pedestrian at grade crossing of the tracks. But it does show again that in Junction Park, there are multiple ways people might feel like going. So I think, is that the last slide? I think it is.
Mhm.
Or, okay, so this, again, this is another recreation layer on the town GIS. And again, you can see at the right-hand side that, you know, pedestrian paths in the park branch off from the trail. And then, and at the upper left, to the right of those funny rectangular blocks, you can see that at grade crossing that kind of comes right off the trail without any marking. Again, behavior and signs and regulations and all that interact in a complicated way, but we have a lot of things. Okay, and then just overlaid those other paths. Okay, thanks, Liz, but that's you're free
Yeah,
to, free to
sorry,
go.
guys.
Real quick observation, Elizabeth, this is again a question for you. When the bridge over the Assabet is complete,
Yeah,
maybe you can bring up one of the slides. It'll come in next to the assisted living. Is that where the path will be? If you're
Yep.
coming from, you know, you're over the bridge, now you're heading to the train station. There's sort of like a
Near Concord Park.
near
Yeah.
Concord
Yeah.
Park, right?
Yeah.
That's where that path will come, right?
yes,
So
Yep.
that's off
Yeah.
to the right on the north of the tracks? Is that what you're?
It's northern.
If you're
yeah.
headed toward, if you're at the tracks and you head towards the Concord Park buildings off to the right.
Okay.
yeah,
And that's
So that's
public,
another,
right? That's a public corridor.
that will be.
Elizabeth,
Okay.
will it intersect with the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail?
Well, it's gonna
Yes.
intersect
Gonna
with
come
that
into that
whole.
parking
That whole
lot.
mess, yeah.
Messy
Yeah.
spot.
It'll, there's actually, so it goes along, right along the edge of the existing commuter rail parking pavement, and then there's, you know, there's an existing fence for Concord Park. That would
Oh,
be
right.
removed, it would go,
Got it, yeah.
right along that existing landscape area. It would actually cross over, there would be modifications to the parking lot to continue it to a direct connection to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
It has to
on the
basically
other
go through
side.
the whole parking lot.
It will go through the whole parking lot, yeah.
Oh.
So from a safety standpoint, Concord Park is happy, because their driveway currently comes in, and then there's that one strip of parking that fronts
Yeah.
there. People just,
They go
go
right
up and
through.
down, so you
Right.
won't be able to fly through the bottom of the parking lot and then fly through that strip. That's
Yeah,
where the
okay.
trail will go directly across.
Will it be separated
What do you mean?
with pylons or something? Then no one's
It
decided
said,
yet.
Yeah,
it said
no, we're-
parking lot,
yeah,
so
we're not.
that's,
Well, I mean, the trail separated from
Yeah.
the cars.
Sorry about that. I don't know where the person went, but,
Somebody's decal. That's kind of an old
Great.
fashioned.
Is that, is there, what's happening in that parking lot? Is there a plan for improvements back there? With the trail?
so it will be for the connection of the Assabet River, bridge and trail. There'll be
Oh,
a
okay.
connection through the parking lot to the Bruce Freeman.
so this is
Right.
at a distance, it's behind the little mall there.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
And running parallel roughly to
to the mall.
Main Street,
Yeah,
but
right,
set behind the mall.
right. Yes.
Parallel?
Well, there's
It's on
a,
the other side. The
Um,
mall's on the other side of the track.
I'd be happy to give,
oh, yeah.
the
and
committee
it's
an
on the-
update
It's on the other
next
side
time.
of the tracks. Yeah.
sorry, I'm just.
Okay, that would be great.
But
Thank
it's not on,
Thank
it's
you
on
very
that
much.
side of the tracks.
Yeah, it's behind the mall and behind the tracks. Yes, I get it.
Mhm.
So that's again, good to think about at the same time.
Thank you.
Any-
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you.
Any concluding comments about Junction Park,
Ugh.
right now?
I think it would,
I think the idea of
I think you're
surveys
doing a survey
is,
and
is,
what?
you've done the, is it the Mass DOT bike survey? I know I was part of that once, where they had very specific regulation, but, methodology. I wonder if they actually might have some data we could pull.
Maybe. I
Right.
don't know if they actually did that spot.
Yeah, because I was there
Okay.
the one year. I know, it would be good to pull that and then figure out what we're trying to do.
I-
Do you remember when that was
I have to
done?
figure out what you're trying to do first.
I said, figure out what data they've got and then what we're trying to do, and then we can, yes.
Yeah.
you-
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
wouldn't,
but
I
before you
wouldn't,
start looking at data, it's good to know what you're trying to do.
yeah,
I just
I,
look at data and try to be inspired.
I wouldn't, rush.
I just get confused.
I wouldn't rush to do
Where I'm trying
count.
go.
I wouldn't rush to do a
Okay.
count, but I would be thinking about what makes sense. And so fall, you could do fall count, certainly like spring and next summer, I mean, this is an ongoing thing. And the trail is, complete through there, and you're gonna get the first full season of usage next year. So, all this thing can kind of go in
I
parallel.
just know that I was sitting at the beginning of Bruce River Rail Trail at Route 62 with Stefan Bader,
Uh-huh.
doing it a few years ago, so I
Yeah.
think there's data, I can go look, I will go look.
It was like 3 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, but to
So it'd
see,
be interesting to then compare it to
Exactly,
what
yeah,
it is
exactly.
You got
now, because
something.
in my observation of it, because it's my neighborhood, there's a lot more people. I
Yes.
saw a lot more people coming
Yes.
through this
yeah,
this
because that,
summer.
I mean, yeah, it's just
Um,
huge, yeah.
So,
Okay,
Okay,
When did the bicycling sign, the painted things go down Commonwealth Ave get put in? I noticed that the other day as I was,
that was done when they did the project where they redid that little section, so that was just before the pandemic.
because that added another layer of confusion to me as far as, you look at the Junction Park and it doesn't look like it's a bike trail.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of,
But then you've got the bicycle signage going down Commonwealth Ave, I guess that is.
right, because there's nowhere else to go, other than, you can't go on the sidewalk on that spot,
Right.
it's way too narrow.
no,
So you
And the
have to go,
roadway's pretty narrow
the
too.
road's very
yeah,
narrow,
yeah,
right?
yeah, the road is,
Careful.
that's a whole separate transportation issue. But I'm sure.
Yeah.
Mariana, did you say something?
Oh, I just, and maybe there's not really room for street parking right in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I mean.
Just
the-
even driving through there feels so sketchy.
Yeah, and imagine a large truck going through there.
Oh,
And,
Which happens.
and
Don't have to
cars
imagine it,
backing up.
seen it many times.
So, no trucks, and anyway, there's a lot of interesting things there with the old centers.
at least they have to go slowly,
One of the
And so are the
signs,
bicycles
one of
because
the,
all these,
yeah.
twists and curves.
one of the signs on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail there at the corner, I think at the west, and it said something about, before the Framingham Fitchburg line or Framingham Lowell line went in, there were only 5 houses in this neighborhood, and then suddenly it became bustling, and now we have the same line, so to speak, to connect. All right, I think I will, if nobody has
Sorry,
any.
two comments.
Oh,
Can I
yes,
chime in?
please.
Just one thing about the signage and everything, in and around that depot, I think one hazard to keep in mind is when the 2 trains, come through at the same time, which I'm not sure if that's every train in the afternoon, but, that just seems like a little bit of a scary hazard, especially for someone, moving quickly, like on a bike, just the more signs, the more look both ways signs. It's definitely scared me a few times when I thought I could pass behind the parked train, and the other train is coming. Other question, not totally related, but the level loading platform we have in West Concord, does anyone know, or has this come up before, either with the town or MBTA, if there's a reason they haven't put those in yet in at Concord Station, or is there a spatial constraint, or is that just something MBTA hasn't gotten to yet? Or is that something we can kind of put on our agenda?
I know a little bit about it, but yeah, it's, this has been discussed before. There's definitely a need at Thorough Depot on, Thorough Street, train station. Back in 2015, I think, the chair of the Disability Commission and the Commission on Disability and the select, board person communicated with MBTA requesting that. That kind of went nowhere. There was potentially some analysis done that said certain solutions wouldn't work, etc. But I think it is mostly just been kicked down the road by the MBTA. Perhaps looking at Concord and saying, you guys are lucky, you have 2 stations, at least one is accessible.
Well, I think that was what it
Wow.
came down to, which is I think they have a huge list of stations throughout the system that need it,
Mhm.
and we
Mhm.
have one.
Mhm.
So count yourself lucky.
Yeah,
Count yourself
well,
lucky. I
well,
like
but by the way, I don't know what the current thing is, but some months back, I checked and the little page on the MBTA website that says, how do you get from one place to another by accessible, said for Concord Center, you go to West Concord and then take your wheelchair 2 miles or 3 miles.
So accessible.
But I did notice a couple days ago, there's a new sign posted at Thorough Depot, and the MBTA is disclosing accessibility and partial accessibility at stations. The West Concord one is not a long full platform, so you have to know which car you're on in order to get off accessibility.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And have to tell the conductor and all that. So I think they're working on this. I have communicated with both state reps and the state senator about this, and I think slowly the MBTA is trying to improve its image. It's doing a lot of work. So, and I have heard, I don't want to jinx it, but I have heard that maybe at least something temporary will be put up for the 250 at Dorothy.
Oh,
But I mean, I just heard yesterday, the town of, the mayor of Salem talking about how they, deal with 100,000 visitors in a day.
Right.
And one of the main things they say is, don't drive here. We have 4,000 parking places. You know, take the train, take the ferry boats. So hopefully some of that is gonna get tested during the 250th about how useful it is to have everybody be able to take a train.
The schedule on the weekend that was horrendous. So that's one of the challenges. It's okay if you're going in to commute, but on the weekend, suddenly there's nothing.
Yeah.
And I think for people coming in for the 250th, the weekend would be when they want, so I don't know.
Are they planning to amend their
Stefan-
service?
Stefan Bader pointed out to me that during some of the, historically, during some of the, tall ships, events in Boston, that MBTA gave free service and extra
They need
schedule.
extra.
Extra schedules
Yeah,
that's needed
yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
And the 250th would be a wonderful impetus to get the
Get something.
platform built.
Yeah,
And this issue about two trains, and I remember Laura Davis mentioned at another meeting that there's no sign saying which is track 1 and track 2. The things comes up, something train approaching on track 2, and there's nothing that indicates which is track 1 and track 2. And that together with what Marianne is pointing about, when two trains come at once, and Nick had pointed about where does it stop vis-a-vis the next intersection.
Yeah, the whole Thorough depot setup should be changed to something like what they have in Waltham, where the trains don't stop next to each other, but
They pass.
so that they never
Past the
block the
intersection.
intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could have a second depot on the other side, that might free up room. All right, I'm gonna go to liaison comment. I noticed Terry Ackerman here. Terry, would you like to say something?
Yes, whoop. Yes, thank you. So I love this idea that TAC members are going to other meetings and working with other committees. I think that's really useful, what you were talking about, Mark, about the economic vitality and the Crosstown Connect. And the Public Works. So for Crosstown Connect, there might be still some funding from ARPA if you could get organized in a hurry. And I know that's not a permanent source of funding, but you know, we need to consider everything like user fees, could pay for part of it, etc. Also, Elizabeth's suggestion of getting 4 committees together to recommend the wayfaring